Okay, is everyone seeing my screen here? Great. Awesome. Well, we're going to get started this morning. Just want to say good morning, everybody. My name's Jack. I work with the Alumni Association, UNC General Alumni Association. I want to thank you for being here today. I mentioned up top already that this is being recorded. So if you have any problems with your name showing up on a recording, that will be posted on our website. Just feel free to log out now and log back in under a different name. So you understand job searching could be a pretty private thing. So people want to remain anonymous, feel free. As we go, feel free to type questions into the chat. I'm going to be looking at them as we go. We also had a couple questions submitted ahead of time that we will be going into with Catherine. But basically, the setup today, here's Catherine and I. Need to get a less fuzzy picture. I'll find one day. Just the essential agenda for today is we are going to talk about building your network from home. Obviously, so many of us are still working from home and want to kind of still pursue maybe taking the next step in our careers. So first, we're going to Catherine's going to just go over a couple of best practices, and I'm going to show you a quick demo, about 5 minutes, of the Tuttle Advising Network, which is a really great resource for reaching out and networking with people who are also Carolina alumni. And that, as of right now, that is free to all alumni. And then we are going to start answering your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to just quickly introduce Catherine. Catherine is a career consultant with the General Alumni Association. Over the past 12 years, worked with MBAs, recent grads, career professionals, executives. She has extensive experience doing all things career coaching and is the owner of Forward Thinking Resumes. We're excited to have Catherine with us today and just generally supporting our alumni.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Told Jack this morning, this is like so exciting. I ordered my Panera coffee and got, all ready. It is the world we're living in, right? We look forward to things like this. We look forward to the ability to have a human connection, and it's so important that we try to keep that connection while still social distancing and sheltering in place. So, I want to talk through a couple things just in terms of how to approach this process of networking from home, and then go ahead and answer some of the questions that came in just through that discussion. And then from there, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. One thing I want you to think about when you start this process is really to understand, what is your goal, right? Why are you building your network? And that's really going to inform your strategy, because while we do have a little bit of extra flexibility working from home, we still have our full-time jobs in some cases. In some cases, we have kids that are home from school and we are trying to keep their studies up the best we can. Still have things that we have to do outside of our job. So it's really important that you kind of take the time to just think about, what is it that I want to get out of this outreach, so that as you start to think about who you're reaching out to and why, there's a theme there. It may be that you want to move up within your organization, or, move around within your organization. So maybe we should be using this time to think about, people internally that you might want to collaborate with, or check in with, or introduce yourself to. If you are thinking about transitioning into a new industry or a new role, thinking about how to explore that and start to reach out to people outside of your immediate network. It may be that you just want to build a brand within your industry and start to connect outside of your specific organization. Or it may be that you just really want to have some human connection, like we've been talking about, and just really want to set up some calls. The good news is that what I'm hearing from clients is that people are very amenable to this right now. Like, the response rate is fantastic, because we all again, have that flexibility and want to feel like we can be helpful in a time like this. So we just want to make sure that when you're reaching out, you're maximizing your time and that person's time that you're asking to connect with. One thing to start out that I might suggest, just to kind of get the ball rolling and get you used to Zoom calls or Skype calls or Google Hangouts or whatever, Google Meetup, there's all these options now that we have. So maybe you start by just looking at your calendar over the next few weeks and thinking about possibly converting some of these meetings that were supposed to be in person to a coffee chat rather than canceling them, right? So set up a coffee, we can eat our lunch and check in over Zoom, whatever the case may be, but just get used to these platforms and logging in and out and getting your sound going, all of that. That will also help if you end up in an interview situation because you'll be more comfortable with this technology that everybody's using. So, for instance, I last night had a virtual cocktail hour with a woman that I used to work with at Duke. I was on Facebook the other day. I saw her son got engaged. I knew him when he was a teenager. So I reached out and said, oh my goodness, I would love to connect. She was so excited. We, not only caught up personally, but then I also got to talk to somebody in my industry who is working with recruiters and working with graduates and working with students to try to navigate this world that we're living in. So, I think anything that you can do to connect personally and professionally right now is fantastic. And I think we got this question in terms of, thinking, I don't necessarily want to make a change right now. I don't necessarily want to go back into the workforce right now. But how do when is the right time to start? Right. And I think the right time is now. We want to be proactive. And especially if you are looking to make a transition, it's going to take time. And so, minimum 3 to 6 months. But I think there's also, some self-exploration that needs to go on in terms of honing in on exactly what you want to do and where. And that requires, informational interviews and gathering information before we even get to the actual job search piece of it. So I would say now is the time. And what we're looking for in these conversations is not, hey, I'm looking for a job, but, I'm interested in making a change. I'm interested in potentially moving in to the technology industry. I've been in consumer goods, and I'm really just interested in technology and trying to explore what's going on in your organization. Or maybe it is, I'm thinking about getting back into the workforce. I did marketing previously 5 years ago when I left to stay home with my children, and I'm just looking to see how the industry has changed and evolved over the past 5 years. I'd love to pick your brain, right? So it's leading with a request for information or advice. And so we had a question about, what questions do I ask once I get them on the phone, right? So I would say when you are looking to build your network and build your connections, you want to focus on building rapport first. And so the best way to do that is to go in with, a set of questions that you can ask and keep the conversation going, but also to ask about them starting out, right? Tell me more about your background. I'd love to hear why you decided to join GSK last year, right? I saw you were previously at IQVIA. Looks like you just made a move. I'd love to hear more about why, what drew you to the organization. A fantastic question to get people going is, tell me about a project you're working on right now. That's top of mind. It's something that isn't, they don't have to go back and search their memory for. It's also going to give you a glimpse into, what the day-to-day is like. I would ask them, what they are seeing in the market, right? How has this pandemic, affected their organization, their workflows, hiring, basically questions that are, easy for them to answer and show a genuine interest in them. So that's kind of a brief intro into these topics, and I know you're probably sick of hearing me talk at this point. I think I've addressed the majority of the questions that came in before, and I know that most of you at this point know that LinkedIn is a fantastic resource for finding people to connect with, whether that's your immediate network or extended network and the UNC network. But the advisor network that the GAA just relaunched is also a fantastic resource, and it is a place where alumni can opt in to be of help to other alumni. So I always recommend when I'm talking to alumni, if you are nervous about this, which I completely understand, I can tell you all day long to do this, but when I'm having a conversation, you're reaching out and talking to somebody I don't know, there's always a little bit of nerves in the beginning. So if it's something you're nervous about, this is a fantastic place to start. It's people that have said, I want to help. So, you are likely going to get a good response right there, and there's no pressure to be perfect in that situation. So I'm going to let Jack take the reins for a little bit and just give you a brief demo of the site. If you're not in it, I would encourage you to go in and sign up after this session.
Yeah, absolutely. I will just say, I would encourage you to, again, mute your lines. And also the Tuttle Advising Network is again, is free and available to all alumni. It had been previously a member exclusive, but we went ahead and opened it up to all alumni just so we could offer as much help as possible. And I also want to say, as we're going here, if your questions are top of mind, go ahead and put them in the chat. You can send them to UNCGA, which is me, or send them to the larger group if you'd prefer, and we will as we go. All right, so this is going to be the first thing that you see when you log into the advisor network, Tuttle Advising Network. You can log in with either your UNC GAA login or just an email. Pretty easy login process. Your education should be pre-populated, and then just a couple questions. I would say it is probably a little simpler than setting up a LinkedIn page. So you're just going to have a dashboard here. You have calendar sync, you have your inbox, your messages. It already has some great people recommended for you based on your interests and your kind of career path, and just some posts and some other resources. So I'm going to show you just how to explore the community here as a way to kind of search the people that might be relevant for you. My internet's being slow today, which is just great. All right. So
also a function of the world we're living in.
Yes.
There are many more people trying to access the internet at one time right now.
Yes.
From home.
So when you click on Explore Community, first you can see people who are online now, which is great. You can kind of just get connected with people online if anyone fit your interests. So this bar up here, you can search on a number of different things. So you can search by location. Maybe I want to just search for people in North Carolina. Apply that. I'm going to look for who were econ majors, economics. And then, maybe I'm looking to get into business and finance and computer science and IT. So just based on that, narrowed it down to, there's 300 users that kind of fit that, and it will get more specific, and you can click on their pages and learn a little bit more about them. And let's say specifically, I am hoping to break into this industry. So one of the great things is when people set up profiles, they say what things that they can help with and what things they're willing to help with. So we go into this I can help with tab here, and looking to start a new career, and making a career change. Let's see the people who fit in there. So then again, we got a nice, looks like 3 people who are exact matches, and then, quite a number that are similar matches. So we're going to click on Audie here, who is a great friend of the General Alumni Association. He did a previous webinar for us, and you can just see his page here. It tells a little bit more about him, his education. These are all the things he's willing to help with, his industry expertise, some of the industries, student organizations he was involved with. And it also says, here are some people who are similar to Audie. So if we want to connect with Audie, we're going to send him a message. Actually, I'm going to use a colleague to send a message because I don't want him to just get a message from me out of the blue. So we are going to look up Katie Thor, who is our membership coordinator. Oh, I got to clear all the other things. Excuse me. Okay. All right. So I'm going to click on Katie here. We're going to send her a message. And one of the great things about this platform is that it will give you kind of some starting ideas if you have no idea where to start on sending a message. We wouldn't recommend just sending the cookie cutter message that they give you. Personalize it, ask some good questions, but at least it gives you a place to start, which is great. So if I want to connect with Katie and I want to talk about career exploration, kind of gives you a little prompted message, just kind of an idea of where to start with Katie. Or if you want to talk about expanding your network, or this last one, reconnect maybe Katie with someone that I had worked with in the past. So we're going to send Katie a message. And the nice thing too is you can actually, there's video chat involved, or video chat already integrated into the platform. And let's say, Katie and I had been talking for a while, and we really said, like, we decided there's a good time for us to connect on Thursday at 2 p.m. So we can add that request meeting, and then we'll send her a message. So also the nice thing about this platform is you don't need to be in the platform to respond to messages. Everything will come directly to your email, and you can respond within your email. So we definitely encourage people to get in the platform and dig around, but if you are in the process of just sending messages, you can go ahead and just continue the conversation over chat. Let me try and mute someone here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, so I love this because it's very similar to LinkedIn, but the fact that it goes straight to somebody's email is such an advantage, because oftentimes with LinkedIn, you just don't know how often people are engaged on the platform. If you have to send a connection message, that process sometimes can take time. Sometimes they'll connect, but they won't answer the request. So this is a fantastic place to kind of supplement your research on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And Catherine already alluded to this, but the great thing about the Tar Heel Advising Network is everyone is here for the express purpose of finding help or giving help. Whereas, people might have a LinkedIn profile for a number of reasons. I use my examples of, I don't check in with my LinkedIn as much as I should. So there are going to be plenty of people like that. So people on this platform are here to give help. And they also, when you're signing up for the platform, if you're somebody who's seeking help but also feels like you have something to offer, you will be asked how many times a month you can be contacted. So it will, if 2 people message you in a month and that's what you set your limit as, then you will be kind of weeded out of searches in the future. So that way, you aren't receiving tons and tons of messages. So just a couple other quick things. We have a discussion forum, pretty standard discussion forum, a lot of different posts on there. We have links out to all the different resources that we have. So, career articles that Catherine has wrote, previous webinars, coffee chats, link to our career coach. And something we recently added is this jobs board. So it is actually free for all members of the platform to share jobs with other Tar Heels. So you can another place where you can search and share jobs. So that's kind of the overview of Tar Heel Advising Network. Again, to sign up, I will send out a link in the chat, but I'll also send it out in the email for you to sign up. Hopefully, pretty easy sign up process for everyone involved. And if you have any other questions specifically about it, feel free to reach out directly to me. Without further ado, any other things on that, Catherine?
No, not at all. I think you did. It's a fantastic resource, and again, I would just encourage everybody to get on there and utilize it. I will say I saw on my list here a question I had to start that portion of the conversation. Who mentioned they're an online student and wanted to get advice on connecting with alumni. I will say, whether you completed your degree online or in person, you're a member of the network. So, you really search and connect the same way. If this person is particularly interested in the admissions process for a certain program, so you can certainly sort the advisor network by degree and try to find somebody with that particular degree to reach out to or via LinkedIn. And also a question that came in about somebody who's expecting to relocate in the next few months. When you are looking to make a change, whether that's functional industry or geography, the importance of the human connection goes up, right? Their employers, especially if you're looking to start a job when you move or in the same time frame, oftentimes employers are sorting, LinkedIn, and then within their internal applicant tracking systems by geography. In an employer's mind, they want somebody who's already there. They don't want to deal with the relocation. They're looking for the quickest, fastest way to fill the role, right? So doing proactive outreach is going to be incredibly important just to get you beyond that online application. So I would say if you're planning on moving in a few months, now is the right time to be doing this outreach. We're starting to see hiring happen again and go all the way through the process. I've got a few people who have accepted positions recently, had a few people who are moving forward in the process and feel like an offer is coming. These are good signs. I will say, government seems to be moving a little bit slower. So if you're looking at kind of state, federal positions, there still seems to be a lot of hiring freezes. And the clients that I've had that were in process with those applications were, it seemed like the online interviews just weren't their cup of tea. It wasn't, they were kind of holding off until they could see people in person. That's not going to be the case with every government agency, but it's what we're seeing. The tech companies, the healthcare companies, the companies that are used to having people work remotely that don't necessarily need you in the office every day. Those companies are still moving forward. So I would say now go ahead and start your outreach.
Great. We had a question submitted here from David. He asks, how many LinkedIn connections is too many? How do you balance quality versus volume when using LinkedIn for business networking? He says specifically to sell consulting. But I guess that's a great question for wider, yeah, how would you recommend building your network on LinkedIn? And
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a push-pull with LinkedIn, because if you are somebody who is selling a service, somebody that wants to come up in searches by recruiters, part of how you rank in terms of coming up in those searches is the number of connections. So it is advantageous to have as many connections as you can. My general thought with LinkedIn, and I think we're going to do a coffee chat on this.
Yes. Yep.
Specifically on this topic, and I'm going to a recruiter or two on as well to give their perspective. LinkedIn is fantastic for kind of understanding who you are connected to and potentially connected to, but amassing connections is not going to do you any good if you're not leveraging them, right? So if I was selling a service, right, if you want to gain clients, it's good to have a lot of connections, but I think you also want to be very thoughtful about who is your potential client, who is it that you think you are kind of a good fit for, and doing proactive outreach that way, trying to take these conversations offline, trying to get people on the phone to understand, again, just starting from an informational standpoint, like what are you seeing, what are your challenges, what are you expecting to need help with in the coming months, kind of starting to build that rapport so that you are top of mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that I would really be proactive about generating content on LinkedIn and positioning yourself as an expert in your particular area. That can be a blog post, that can be sharing an industry article with your thoughts on it. It doesn't all have to be your own content, but it should all be your perspective on what's going on, or a particular subject.
Great. And yeah, again, for a plug, we're going to be doing a LinkedIn one on June 4th, which is crazy because that's 2 weeks away in June. I guess that's what happens when you're in your house for months on end. Yeah. I want to encourage people again to put questions in on the chat. We got about a half an hour left. But just had a question for Catherine. What is like 1 or 2 questions that you should always ask on an informational interview?
Yes. So I would say one question to start out is, again, about them. Tell me more about yourself and your career path, right? We want to get that person comfortable kind of talking and sharing and showing interest in them. So that would be my first question I would always ask. My last question, or 2 that I would always ask, would be, is there anybody else you think I should talk to? And are there any resources that you would recommend for me based on, our discussion? So that could be, a professional organization that you should be a part of. It could be a blog that you should be reading regularly. You can tailor it based on what it is that you are looking to accomplish. Again, getting back to that goal. But I would always ask for a follow-up, right? Who can I talk to? What resources should I be looking at? Because that gives you the opportunity to loop back, right? And so we often get a question about, like, how do you make meaningful connections, right? Quality over quantity, which I think the previous question was getting to. And that's really important, because we can have great conversations, but then if, we don't have a reason to follow up, then sometimes those can wither. So if they suggest you reach out to, their colleague, obviously do that, have that conversation, loop back, let them know, thank you, I had a great conversation with Dave. This is what I got out of it. Would love your thoughts, or maybe we could reconnect, in a few weeks, or whatever the case may be. Or this article was fantastic. I really think I have a better grasp of, the skills needed in this field. And I would always, I said this one earlier, but I like the question, tell me about a project that you're working on or a challenge that you're facing right now. Something that really gets into like what the day-to-day is in their role.
Great. We had a question here from Natalie asking, is there a plan in the agenda to facilitate networking with the people who have joined this call? Unfortunately, we have just so many people on the call, we kind of couldn't set it up that way this time, but I would encourage you again to join the advising network, because that is a great way to network with people who are willing to help out. Also, I'm going to send a survey after this call and definitely encourage you to leave feedback there if that is something you're more interested in doing, because we are, this is a different time for all of us, and we usually do these kind of coffee chats that are more set up to be more peer networking, but that is something that we might look at again in the near future. So thank you so much.
Idea.
Yeah, thank you so much for your feedback. I'm also just going to drop an article in the chat that Catherine wrote for us a little bit ago, just on networking effectively, and kind of good questions to ask as you're on informational interviews. Catherine, just as kind of a follow-up on your last point, I was told by a mentor, like right when I got out of school, that you always send a handwritten thank you note. And I was wondering if A, that is still the case, and B, is that still the case in this time where we have to be, extra careful on what we're doing physically?
Yeah. I will say that there is still a strong contingent of hiring managers and people in general that appreciate a handwritten note. I was actually talking to a woman the other day who is the head of a commercial leasing operation here in Raleigh, and just kind of picking her brain again on what's going on. What does this mean for work going forward? And somehow it came up, the topic of handwritten notes came up, and she, said, I keep them all. Like this is something that, people don't do anymore. And so, especially if there's not like an immediate goal of that conversation, like it's not a thank you after an interview, it's just thank you for having coffee with me, or thank you for spending 20 minutes with me to share your experience. I left that conversation feeling energized, and I'd love to keep the relationship going. It goes a long way, especially when you're talking about kind of the longer term goal of maintaining that relationship. I have another friend who's a recruiter here in Raleigh. She keeps all the notes in her office. I keep all my notes from clients that have written thank you notes.
Oh, that's great.
I haven't sent them in the mail. So I love it. I think you should still do it. I understand if you have an interview and they're interviewing multiple people, there's a need to get it in quickly, and so email often is the best way. But no, I don't think that the current situation is a reason to stop doing
and
that.
Actually Marcy, who's on our team at the GA, just sent me a message saying you could always scan the note and email it, so a nice way to send a handwritten note as well.
True. Yes. And I know we got another question about discovering networking events in your local area. And while obviously people are not gathering right now, and we don't have those meetups and events to go to, I think a lot of organizations are still doing things virtually. So I did a little search yesterday. Toastmasters, which is an incredible networking opportunity and opportunity to improve your public speaking and your confidence in that space, they've moved their sessions online. You can still join. Yeah. You can still have sessions like this where you are, presenting online. The American Marketing Association is a professional organization, right? They have things online. They've moved that online. I'm a part of a networking group for women in the triangle, like professional women in the triangle, all of that is now online. So these things are still going on. And I think with smaller groups to get to the question we had earlier, because it's typically smaller, and you're all, in the same area, then, have a follow, it's easier to kind of break off or have a follow-up conversation with someone. But I would definitely encourage you not to put that off. If that's something that you're interested in and have time for, then I would go for it. Go ahead and sign up and get going with the virtual sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been noticing, so I'm involved in kind of the nonprofit community in the Triangle, and that is something that I have seen is a lot of organizations, it seems like, are even doing more than they were in the past, but they're just doing it virtually. So there, maybe seems like there's less opportunities, but if you do a little digging, they're out there. Joel asks, I'm in the job search right now and exploring a pivot into a new field. How would you recommend balancing the tone of an intro email between one and that is seeking information or a leg up on a specific role versus a quote unquote real informational chat? So how do you kind of, I guess, balance uh, trying to get information versus like a kind of just trying to make a connection, I guess?
So we're thinking, to clarify, this is like, for instance, you see a posting and you are interested in the posting, obviously you want to learn more to get how to get that referral, but is that what we're...
I think that's kind of how I read it. And Joel, feel free to shoot a note if that is not what you intended. But I think that's a good question too. Is if you see a role that maybe there's a company that you're interested in, and one of your LinkedIn connections works there. How do you actually do that in an eloquent way?
Yes, and I get that question a lot. It's a great question, Joel. Thanks for bringing that up. So obviously, if there is a role open, we can acknowledge that. We don't want to kind of be too coy about not mentioning that at all. Partly because there are often times, like if you are planning to apply and there's like a timeline, some companies have specific links for people that are applying with a referral. And so getting that link and having that conversation to move you out of that general black hole that is the online application process. We want to be open about that. I would say, something along the lines of, I am a fellow Tar Heel, or I'm a friend of a friend, that kind of thing. How am I getting to you? I have been thinking about making a transition into this industry, or whatever the case may be. I see that your organization has a posting that I feel like would be a good fit. I'd love to set up some time to talk with you about your experience and just get a better sense of the culture there before I apply, or something along those lines, right? I'm acknowledging there's a position, but I'm not looking for a referral just yet. I'm trying to better understand if I'm a good fit for that role or organization. I think people are more open to that. The other thing I would suggest when you are reaching out, so let's say that person is not a fellow UNC alum, you can't necessarily connect to them through the GAA group or the advisor network. I would look at using and leveraging that intermediary connection. So rather than just emailing them cold through LinkedIn, I would go to that person in between and say, hey, Catherine, I see that you know Jack over at the GAA. Do you know him well? And if so, would you be willing to introduce us over email? I'm really interested in learning more about his organization. It looks like they have a couple job postings. People are more open and more responsive when you have a mutual connection, right? So Jack hopefully likes me and wants to, be somebody who, can help when he can. So he is going to prioritize that just because we have an existing relationship. So I would do that as much as you can, trying to take it off of LinkedIn, again, just to increase the response rate.
Absolutely. And you mentioned this earlier, but it is kind of amazing. People always seem willing to help, especially at this time. If they can do a little bit, sending that email, you'll more times than not, I feel like you'll get a good response. Lauren sent in this question, which I think you might have just answered, but want to make sure that we recognize it. She says, "What are your thoughts on cold calling, sending a LinkedIn notes to someone you found on LinkedIn to get their insights or advice, but not to sell something?"
Yeah.
And then Bob kind of added in saying, he thinks it's helpful to add a line or two indicating a shared interest or connection versus just sending that blind request.
Yes, I would say never, ever, ever send, "I'd like to add you to my LinkedIn network." If you do not know that person very well. I get a lot of those. And if we don't have a certain number of mutual connections, I will ignore it. It's the purpose of this site is to connect and make meaningful connections, but there is also a certain amount of spam. There are fake profiles. There are all these things. I need to know why it is that you want to connect. So adding a quick note about that shared interest or focus area or how you would like to connect is important. I would also keep in mind that on LinkedIn, when you are sending a request to connect, when I click accept, it's going to take me to a different page. It does not take me back to your message with that initial request. So, you might give a general, "I'd love to chat with you about your organization, your experience," whatever the case may be. 9 times out of 10, I accept. It takes me to other people you may know. I get distracted and I forget to answer that initial request. So I would suggest, you'll get a notification when that person is accepted. If they don't write you back within a day, I would go back and follow up and send, now that you're connected, send a message or an email, since when you're connected, you can see their contact information.
Lauren clarified here that it was more looking to get insight for someone you don't know, not even asking to connect. So maybe you see somebody who's in, for example, if you're in a career coaching industry and you want to get some more information on that, but you maybe don't have any connections, where you're just looking for information. How would you advise differently there? Would you advise differently, I guess?
So can I see the question?
Sure. It says to everyone. It's in the chat.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm answering that the right way. So to get insight from someone you don't know, not even asking to connect. So you have the option with premium to send a message and say, "I'd love to just talk with you, get some insight on XYZ." I would say you might get a better response rate if you connect. I don't know that there's a downside in sending a request, but premium would be the way to get around that because you get a certain number of emails that go beyond like that first or second degree connection.
Great.
Yeah. And awesome. If you don't have, I was just going to say, because I get not everybody wants to pay for premium. So to get around that, if you, again, kind of come up with your goal, get a list of people you might want to talk to, and sign up for premium, you get a free month. You can cancel it at the end of the month and use your 4 in-mails that you get in that trial to connect with those people, and then just cancel it so you're not paying the $30 a month.
Yes. Make sure I always have to put like 8 calendar reminders to cancel it. Great. Well, so we got about 10 more minutes here. If people have any further questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. And just while we're waiting, I'm just going to go over some of the career resources that we have. As the Alumni Association, again, we opened up a lot of these recently to all alumni just to kind of help out through this time. So if you go to our website and then you resources and then career resources, we have the Tuttle Advising Network, which we already covered. We have these coffee chats. We're shooting to do about one every other week. So keep an eye on that. We have a library of over 20 of previous webinars and recorded coffee chats. So hopefully if you're looking for a specific topic, you can find something that's good and relevant for you in there. I know we always encourage people to look at the resume and cover letter ones because those are pretty evergreen. They don't seem to change a lot. We have the resource articles, kind of short articles written by Catherine, and then we have our official LinkedIn group. I will also, so that those are things that are available to everybody at this time. If you were a GAA member, you get one session a year with Catherine, which is a great member benefit and one we definitely encourage people to use. And for additional time, we are encouraging, or for additional time, people can do additional sessions, also complimentary as well. Again, just trying to be cognizant of the difficult economic times that we are in right now. We also want to say that for May 2020 grads, we are extending unlimited for 3 years following graduation as long as they maintain an active membership. And then we have June 4th, we have this virtual coffee chat coming up on leveraging your LinkedIn. So little bit like today, but we're really going to dive into LinkedIn. And as Catherine mentioned, we're hopefully going to have some special guests joining us today to kind of dive in even further.
Yeah. On that one, I'll plan on it the same way Jack did. I'll share my screen and show you how to do some different things, not just in terms of what to put on your profile, but also how to find people, how to make connections without premium. So just tips and tricks for that platform, and obviously the opportunity to ask questions of me, and then hopefully a recruiter who uses the site to hire people.
Great. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to see. Again, remind people to feel free to drop a question in the chat. So we had one of the questions we had ahead of time was, I'm looking for a new job within a year. How do I build my network to both prepare for that and to make connections that I've made that will last for the long haul? So how do you kind of make sure you're not just making connections to help you get to a new job and then kind of forgetting about them?
Yeah. So I think we've talked about this some, but being proactive, starting early. This process takes time. So if you're thinking you want to be employed this time next year, I think taking some time right now to really hone in on what you see yourself doing, what companies you'd like to target, what industry you want to be in, like really putting some clarity around what it is that you will be looking for so people can be helpful. And then from there, I would start to have informational interviews, right? So it's once you understand where it is you want to go, trying to connect with people in that space. I think starting now is fantastic because there's no pressure, right? It's not I'm looking to get back in the workforce tomorrow. It's I think in the coming year I'm going to want to get back in the workforce or make a change. I'm just trying to explore my options. And again, with the making the connections last, offering to be a resource to them, connecting on LinkedIn and saying, if I'm connected to anybody, certainly, let me know. I'm happy to be an intermediary. Again, asking for a to-do and following up, keeping them kind of abreast of your progress if, you had a really good connection. So trying to stay in the loop and sending a note on the holidays, right? I mean, little things, but just ways to maintain that relationship and show that you are being proactive about that.
Absolutely. Great. So got a couple more minutes. Doesn't seem like we've gotten any more questions in the chat, but that's okay. I'll just give it, maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. People want to put in their last minute questions, but want to say thank you so much to Catherine for being here and leading us through this discussion, answering all these questions with great answers. Yeah, a lot of great resources available on the website. I will send some out in an email along with the recording of this chat. So hopefully you got some good tips today to get started on building your network.
And think about not just your external network, but your internal network, really leveraging this time as a time to connect with people inside your organization. Maybe, again, people that you would like to work with, or people that you worked with previously that you haven't been in touch with lately. Really just, it's so important for the short and long term, and we want to build this network when we don't need it. So it's there and primed when we do. I know that, a lot of this can be very personal, and so it might not be something you want to put in a chat box. So, I'd be happy to set up coaching sessions with any of you that are interested. And I believe Jack will put that email up so you can connect with me. But I'm glad that you all were able to join us today, and I look forward to talking with some of you one-on-one in the future.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Catherine. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your Wednesday.
Yeah, same. Bye.